Right-wing commentator Charlie Kirk was dead to begin with, assassinated at one of his college campus events in Utah. If political America was divided beforehand, this would be a further twist of the knife, leaving people on all sides bitter and resentful, whether they cared about the man or not. Humility, it seemed, had become a scarce resource, though that had been true for a long time.
If one of you were in the crowd and you're a conservative fan of mine and you end up, getting blown away or whatever the fuck, I'm making fun of you the next day on Twitter.
I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry.
America deserved 9/11, dude. Fuck it. I'm saying it.
In the aftermath, some left-wing people, commentator or not, were being fired or deplatformed for having various levels of antagonistic views of Charlie Kirk and his death, with some leftists outright celebrating his death. A pretty depressing state of affairs, to be sure. One of the left-wing commentators affected was talk show host Jimmy Kimmel, who both originally sent his regards to Charlie's family and also said the murder was bad overall.
The second largest city in our bitterly divided nation, where like the rest of the country, we're still trying to wrap our heads around the senseless murder of the popular podcaster and conservative activist Charlie Kirk yesterday, whose death has amplified our anger, our differences. And I've seen a lot of extraordinarily vile responses to this from both sides of the political spectrum. Some people are cheering this, which is something I won't ever understand.
But also angered people with his overly flippant attitude towards the murder.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from.
Here's everything you need to know about the off-key monologue that got Jimmy Kimmel's show pulled indefinitely.
In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half-staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
Yes. He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. Demolition, construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish, okay? And then we installed the most beautiful chandelier. Sconces, you wouldn't believe. There's something wrong with them. There really is.
And I remember he did something similar with the healthcare CEO murder, where he praised the looks of the murderer.
So many women and so many men are going nuts over how good-looking this killer is, and there's a huge wave of horny washing over us right now. It's like when one of the guys you work with says, I had a dream about you last night. When it's the FedEx guy with the big muscles and the rolled up sleeves, you're like, oh. But if it's the bald IT guy wearing Crocs with black socks, you're on the phone with HR. It's kind of that same dynamic. Our staff today, I have never experienced anything like this. These are screen grabs of actual exchanges between our members of our staff and their friends, relatives, whatever. I've changed the names to protect the guilty, but let's see. Lorraine C. asks, do you guys think the United Healthcare CEO killer is hot? Friend replies, yes. I love Luigi. I think he's gay, though. This is an exchange between two of our producers.
I remember Nick Fuentes talking about how Twitter is basically 4chan now, due to the extremeness of the rhetoric and its seemingly overall partisan tint towards the right. Well, this is Reddit on TV, so what matters most is partisan politics and fighting the enemy. If someone on the opposing side gets murdered, it's free real estate to meme on and attack my opponents. Some would argue that there are times when that kind of political activity does more harm than good, especially regarding events the broad majority of people would condemn, such as assassinations. A good test for how distasteful you actually find this to be would be to swat the political leanings of Kirk and Kimmel and see if you still support it or not. So this dialogue from Kimmel got Jimmy Kimmel Live pulled from ABC, alongside some affiliated broadcasters owned by Sinclair Inc. and Nexstar Media Group. Together, they own around 60 television stations affiliated with ABC, and they refuse to air Jimmy Kimmel Live on them. Even further, the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, Brendan Carr, who was nominated by President Trump, made comments that seemed like they would start revoking broadcasting licenses in service of the quote-unquote public interest.
When you look at the conduct that has taken place by Jimmy Kimmel, it appears to be some of the sickest conduct possible. As you've indicated, there are avenues here for the FCC. So there are some ways in which I need to be a little bit careful, because we could be called ultimately to be a judge on some of these claims that come up. But I don't think this is an isolated incident. I mean, you go back to Representative Swalwell, and he had a tweet out last week where he was saying that, emphasizing that Charlie Kirk's killer was a straight white male from a Republican family that voted for Donald Trump. In some quarters, there's a very concerted effort to try to lie to the American people about the nature, as you indicate, of one of the most significant, newsworthy public interest acts that we've seen in a long time. And what appears to be an action by Jimmy Kimmel to play into that narrative that this was somehow a MAGA or Republican motivated person. If that's what happened here with his conduct, that is really, really sick. And I've been very clear from the moment that I have become chairman of the FCC. I want to reinvigorate the public interest. And what people don't understand is that the broadcasters, and you've gotten this right, are entirely different than people that use other forms of communication. They have a license granted by us at the FCC, and that comes with it an obligation to operate in the public interest. And we can get into some ways that we've been trying to reinvigorate the public interest and some changes that we've seen. But frankly, when you see stuff like this, I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead.
What would you like to see done at ABC?
Well, look, I think what you said there strikes me as a very reasonable, minimal step that can be taken. I mean, obviously, look, there's calls for Kimmel to be fired. I think you could certainly see a path forward for suspension over this. And again, the FCC is going to have remedies that we could look at. And again, we may ultimately be called to be a judge on that. But
although he did later clarify that revoking licenses isn't what he meant.
A lot of Democrats out there that are engaged in a campaign of projection and distortion. And distortion is they're completely misrepresenting the work of the FCC and what we've been doing. I saw there was a letter from some Senate Democrats that said the FCC threatened to revoke the license of Disney and ABC if they didn't fire Jimmy Kimmel, and that did not happen in any way, shape, or form. And what I spoke about last week was that when concerns are raised about news distortion, there's an easy way for parties to address that and work that out. And in the main, that takes place between local television stations that are licensed by the FCC and what we call national programmers like Disney. They work that out, and there doesn't need to be any involvement of the FCC. Now, if they don't, there's a way that's not as easy, which is someone can file a complaint at the FCC, and then the FCC, by law, that's set up by Congress, has to adjudicate that complaint. And what I've been very clear in the context of the Kimmel episode is the FCC, and myself in particular, have expressed no view on the ultimate merits had something like that been filed.
And to be fair, he did talk more about that in that original interview with Benny Johnson. But I didn't want to show like 10 minutes of it, so if you're curious, you should watch that after this video. President Trump himself made no qualms celebrating the move, and also called for other leftist hosts to be canceled, Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers. Needless to say, all this inevitably caused public backlash in the form of boycotts, canceled subscriptions, angry phone calls, and ignited further cynical attacks over each side not caring about free speech. And I wouldn't even call the free speech thing a debate. It's just a flame war that's going on with no one wanting to have good faith conversation about it. Because it's pretty apparent to me that nobody actually likes free speech. It's all about how it makes me feel, and if it makes me feel bad, then it shouldn't happen. We've seen that with leftists in the past rioting on college campuses over hosting right-wing speakers. And we've seen that with rightists in the past trying to ban wokeness from schools and the workplace. So I just roll my eyes when circumstances change and people like to pretend that their side is now the side of free speech until it's not. So it didn't take long for Disney to bring back Jimmy Kimmel Live on ABC, although Sinclair and Nexstar tried to hold out longer. They made similar comments, essentially saying they wanted to serve the public trust and do its best for their communities, in part by holding Kimmel accountable for stirring shit up and potentially making false claims about the political affiliation of Charlie Kirk's murderer, which has been another point of contention and cynically forced division. Nexstar was also accused of trying to get into Trump's good graces because they have a merger with another company, Tegna, which they need approval for, but they too eventually caved. Jimmy Kimmel Live made its inevitable return, and Kimmel made a speech that was less divisive than his previous one. He thanked some right-wingers for their support, although throwing in a couple jabs.
Thank you. Anyway, as I was saying before I was interrupted, I'm not sure who had a weirder 48 hours, me or the CEO of Tylenol. It's been overwhelming. I've heard from a lot of people over the last 6 days. I've heard from all the people in the world over the last 6 days. Everyone I have ever met has reached out 10 or 11 times, supported our show, cared enough to do something about it, to make your voices heard so that mine can be heard. I will never forget it. And maybe, weirdly, maybe most of all, I want to thank the people who don't support my show and what I believe, but support my right to share those beliefs anyway. People who I never would have imagined, like Ben Shapiro, Clay Travis, Candace Owens, Mitch McConnell, Rand Paul, even my old pal Ted Cruz, who, believe it or not, said something very beautiful on my behalf.
I hate what Jimmy Kimmel said. I am thrilled that he was fired.
Oh, wait, no, not that. The other part.
But let me tell you, if the government gets in the business of saying,
what you
we
can
don't
and can't
like
say
what you, the media, have said, we're going to ban you from the airwaves if you don't say what we like, that will end up bad for conservatives.
I don't think I've ever said this before, but Ted Cruz is right. He's absolutely right. This affects all of us, including him. I mean, think about it. If Ted Cruz can't speak freely, then he can't cast spells on the Smurfs. Even though I don't agree with many of those people on most subjects, some of the things they say even make me want to throw up. It takes courage for them to speak out against this administration, and they did, and they deserve credit for it, and thanks. The President of the United States made it very clear he wants to see me and the hundreds of people who work here fired from our jobs. Our leader celebrates Americans losing their livelihoods because he can't take a joke. He was somehow able to squeeze Colbert out of CBS. Then he turned his sights on me, and now he's openly rooting for NBC to fire Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers and the hundreds of Americans who work for their shows who don't make millions of dollars. And I hope that if that happens, or if there's even any hint of that happening, you will be 10 times as loud as you were this week. We have to speak out against this.
And he would go on to clarify his statements on the murder of Charlie Kirk and praise Erica Kirk.
I've been hearing a lot about what I need to say and do tonight, and the truth is, I don't think what I have to say is going to make much of a difference. If you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't. I have no illusions about changing anyone's mind. But I do want to make something clear because it's important to me as a human, and that is, you understand that it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man. I don't think there's anything funny about it. I posted a message on Instagram on the day he was killed, sending love to his family and asking for compassion, and I meant it, and I still do. Nor was it my intention to blame any specific group for the actions of what it was obviously a deeply disturbed individual. That was really the opposite of the point I was trying to make, but I understand that to some that felt either ill-timed or unclear, or maybe both. And for those who think I did point a finger, I get why you're upset. If the situation was reversed, there's a good chance I'd have felt the same way. I have many friends and family members on the other side who I love and remain close to, even though we don't agree on politics at all. I don't think the murderer who shot Charlie Kirk represents anyone. This was a sick person who believed violence was a solution, and it isn't. Ever. And also, selfishly, I am a person who gets a lot of threats. I get many ugly and scary threats against my life, my wife, my kids, my coworkers, because of what I choose to say. And I know those threats don't come from the kind of people on the right who I know and love. So that's what I wanted to say on that subject. A moment over the weekend, a very beautiful moment. I don't know if you saw this. On Sunday, Erica Kirk forgave the man who shot her husband. She forgave him. That is an example we should follow. If you believe in the teachings of Jesus as I do, there it was. That's it. A selfless act of grace, forgiveness from a grieving widow. It touched me deeply. And I hope it touches many. And if there's anything we should take from this tragedy to carry forward, I hope it can be that, not this. So
I'd say this one was handled better. Not because he broke down in tears, but because he took the initiative to use his firing as a way to bring people together, something many others would have lacked the humility for. In the aftermath, Disney's problems have only mounted, with their shareholders getting riled up over their fallen stock prices as a result of the Kimmel suspension. Donald Trump has also potentially threatened to sue ABC for bringing Kimmel back, calling it an illegal campaign contribution to the Democratic Party. Brendan Carr will also be testifying before the Senate to answer for his alleged chauvinistic behavior regarding his alleged licensing threats. When it rains, it pours, huh? Overall, I'd say Disney's decision to pull Kimmel was a bad idea. Aside from the legal trouble it caused, all it managed to do is stir up more partisan division that was all for naught anyway since they brought him back. This is especially bad since there was a shooting at an ABC affiliate, which may have been a direct result of Kimmel being pulled from air. I'm not blaming Disney or the others for the shooting, but they ended up bringing Kimmel back anyway, so you can't say that in theory it was an inevitable ideological clash. Not just because he shot up some random ABC affiliate that has no influential bearing over Disney, Sinclair, or Nexstar, but because Kimmel was gone for about a week before Disney folded. If there's anything to be learned from this, it's that America's polarization isn't solved by less speech, it's solved by better speech. The last thing America needs right now is more self-interested edgelords stirring the pot. I'm tired of them, dude. And I hope everyone else will be too. Someday.
Just watch the wheel go round. I'll cheer as you go down.